Welcome to our deep dive into, it's a pretty fascinating concept, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's called the collective shadow,
Mhm.
and it might just change how you see the world.
It really might.
It's like those little quirks we all have,
Right.
those things about ourselves that we try to keep hidden,
Yeah, yeah.
but amplified to a
Mhm.
societal level.
Yeah, exactly.
So think, like biases,
Yeah.
conflicts, even global crises.
Yeah,
Pretty intriguing, right?
absolutely.
Today, we're going to explore how this shadow plays out in culture
Yeah.
and what it means for you.
Using your source material, of course.
Exactly.
So what I think is so fascinating about this concept
Okay.
is that it's not, about being bad or evil.
Right.
It's about those parts of ourselves,
Okay.
both individually and as a society,
Mm-hmm.
that we just consider unacceptable
All
or
right.
try to push away.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like you're a bad person.
Right.
It's more about those aspects of ourselves that we just deem unthinkable.
Right.
And we try to repress.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Just like every hero has a villain.
Right.
Every light casts a shadow.
Oh, okay.
Societies also have this hidden side.
I see.
It's called the shadow.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture here. But
Right.
why
Yeah,
would societies create this shadow in the first place?
that's a great question.
Wouldn't it be better to just acknowledge those less desirable parts of ourselves?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
Societies, just like individuals,
Mm-hmm.
need a sense of identity
Okay.
and belonging.
Right.
And one way to create that is by defining what we are not.
Oh.
You see, so we create
Interesting.
a group or an entity that embodies those qualities we reject.
Oh,
And then by projecting those qualities outwards,
I see.
we create this sense of unity and cohesion
Okay.
within our own group.
So it's like a defense mechanism then.
You got to
It's easier to point fingers and say they're the problem than to look inwards
absolutely
and acknowledge our own flaws.
much easier.
Yeah.
A great historical example of this
Oh,
from
yeah.
your source material is the Cold War.
Oh, right.
The West projected its fears of totalitarianism and oppression
Mm-hmm.
onto the Soviet Union.
Right.
It created this simplified enemy figure
Yeah.
that everyone could rally against.
Yeah.
But this had real-world consequences.
So by simplifying the complex reality of another nation,
Exactly.
they fueled anxiety and conflict.
Exactly. And while it might have created a sense of solidarity
Mm.
within the West,
Right.
it also prevented any real dialogue or understanding
Yeah.
between the two sides.
I see.
You see, this kind of shadow projection can have a huge impact on how we relate to other cultures and nations.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
How does this shadow projection actually play out in our
Right.
everyday lives? I mean, how do these negative traits get assigned? Yeah.
To entire groups of people.
Well, it often happens through
Right.
stereotypes,
Right.
scapegoating,
Yeah.
and prejudice.
Okay.
These are all psychological mechanisms that allow us to distance ourselves
Mhm.
from those uncomfortable aspects of our own society
Right.
that we just don't want to face.
So instead of dealing with those issues head on,
Yeah,
we project them onto others.
precisely.
Right.
Think about European colonialism,
Okay.
which your source material highlights.
Right.
European powers labeled other cultures as savage or uncivilized
Oh, wow.
to justify their exploitation and domination.
So they essentially created this narrative to make it easier
Yes.
to exploit and control these other cultures.
By viewing other cultures as inferior,
Right.
they could avoid confronting their own capacity for greed,
Wow.
violence, and
Yes.
oppression.
And what's even more disturbing is that this isn't just a thing of the past.
No, it's not.
This type of projection is happening today.
Absolutely.
Media and cultural narratives play a huge role in shaping and spreading these projections.
I see.
Think about how certain groups are portrayed
Mm-hmm.
in news coverage,
Yeah.
or even in movies and TV shows.
Right.
These representations, often subtle and unconscious, can reinforce existing biases
Right.
and contribute to a simplified us versus them narrative.
So the media we consume plays a huge role
Without a doubt.
in how we perceive the world and the people in it.
Yes, and remember,
Yeah.
the source material brought up the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
Think about how that global crisis amplified existing biases
Oh, yeah.
against certain groups.
Yeah.
It led to increased discrimination and scapegoating.
It's easier to blame someone else
It is.
than to address the complex systemic issues at play.
Unfortunately, that's a common pattern
Yeah.
throughout history.
Well.
Instead of acknowledging our shared humanity and working together to solve problems,
Right.
we often resort to blame and division. It's a manifestation of the collective shadow at its most potent.
Okay, so we've established that this collective shadow exists,
Right.
that societies use it as a defense mechanism,
Yes.
and that it can manifest in really harmful ways.
Uh-huh.
But is there any way to escape this?
Well,
Are we doomed to be controlled by these projections forever?
that's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And thankfully, the answer is not entirely bleak.
oh, God.
Jung believed that the first step toward resolving the shadow,
Okay.
both individually and collectively,
Mhm.
is awareness.
So are you saying that the first step is to shine a light
Exactly.
on these hidden biases and projections
Yeah,
to bring them into our conscious awareness?
Exactly. And this isn't just about understanding the concept intellectually.
Oh.
It's about truly acknowledging the shadow's existence
Okay.
and how it operates within us and our communities.
So how do we do that?
Well,
How do we actually cultivate this awareness in a meaningful way?
that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Oh, okay.
We'll delve into specific techniques and strategies
All right.
for bringing the shadow into the light
Okay.
and starting that process of transformation.
I'm definitely ready to learn more about that.
I think you'll find it fascinating.
This is some heavy stuff,
It is.
but also incredibly fascinating.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
But remember,
Okay.
understanding the collective shadow
Mm-hmm.
isn't about blaming ourselves
Right.
or feeling guilty.
Gotcha.
It's about empowerment.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the patterns,
Right.
understanding their origins,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately finding ways to break free from them.
Okay, so this is about taking responsibility, not just pointing fingers.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how we might be unconsciously contributing to these problems so we can start to create real change.
Exactly. It's about using this knowledge
Right.
to create a more conscious and compassionate world,
I like that.
both for ourselves and for generations to come.
Well, on that note, let's take a short break
Sounds good.
and come back for part 2,
Okay.
where we'll delve deeper into the path towards healing and transformation.
Hey.
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive on the collective shadow.
Yes, welcome back.
We've been exploring
Yeah.
how this hidden side of society really shapes our world.
Absolutely.
And now I'm ready to delve deeper into how we can start to heal and transform it.
Okay.
Where do we go from here?
Well, we ended the last segment
Right.
talking about awareness as that first step.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Hmm.
Simply knowing about the shadow isn't enough.
Right.
We need to actively work to bring it into the light.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Hmm.
How do we move from simply being aware of the shadow
Right.
to actually transforming it,
Yeah.
both in ourselves and in our community?
It's a journey.
Okay.
There's no quick fix. But one crucial step is to cultivate individual self-awareness.
Oh.
This means honestly examining our own biases,
Mm-hmm.
prejudices, and projections.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself judging others or making assumptions
Uh-huh.
based on stereotypes?
It's much easier to point fingers at others
It is.
than to turn that critical gaze inward.
It's definitely challenging,
Right.
but it's essential
Yeah.
by recognizing those moments.
Okay.
You start to understand your own shadow tendencies
Mm-hmm.
and can break free from those unconscious patterns.
See.
It's about asking yourself tough questions.
Okay.
Like, what are my underlying fears
Right.
and insecurities that might be driving my judgments and behaviors?
It sounds like doing some serious soul searching.
It is, in a way,
Yeah.
but individual effort alone isn't going to solve a problem.
Right.
It's woven into the fabric of society.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We need to go beyond individual work
Okay.
and look at the systems and structures
Mhm.
that perpetuate these harmful patterns.
So like what?
Well, think about education.
Okay.
How can we teach kids
Right.
about bias, prejudice,
Mm-hmm.
and the dynamics of the collective shadow?
So equip them with the tools to recognize these patterns early on.
Exactly. We also need to create media and cultural narratives
Okay.
that challenge stereotypes and promote diversity.
Right.
Instead of perpetuating divisive us versus them narratives,
Mm.
we need stories that foster understanding and connection
Right.
across differences.
That sounds like a tall order,
It is.
especially in our current media landscape,
Yeah.
which often thrives on conflict and outrage.
It's a challenge, but I believe it's a necessary one.
I agree.
We need to be conscious of the media we consume
Right.
and actively seek out diverse voices and perspectives.
So it's about being a critical consumer of information
Yes.
and supporting media that promotes understanding and empathy.
Yes, and don't forget about policy
Okay.
and systemic change.
Oh, yeah.
We need to examine our systems and structures.
Like, for instance.
For instance, our criminal justice,
Okay.
education, and economic policies designed in ways that perpetuate inequality and discrimination.
So we need to look at the big picture
We do.
and understand how these systems might be unconsciously reinforcing these negative patterns.
Precisely, we can't just focus on individual behavior
Right.
without addressing the systemic factors that contribute to the problem.
Yeah.
It requires a multifaceted approach.
It sounds like tackling the collective shadow is a massive undertaking.
It is.
That requires effort on all levels.
Yeah.
Individual, community, and societal.
It definitely is. But remember, we're not just talking about fixing or eliminating the shadow.
Right.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
The shadow is a part of us,
Right.
individually and collectively.
Okay.
It's about integrating it, learning from it, and using it as a catalyst for growth and transformation.
So instead of trying to banish the shadow,
Yeah,
we learn to understand it and even find its hidden wisdom.
exactly. It's about becoming more whole individuals
I like that.
and creating a more conscious and compassionate world.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just about tackling a problem.
Right.
It's about using this understanding of the shadow to evolve as individuals and as a society.
Absolutely. And remember, even though we've been focusing on the shadow's negative aspects,
Right.
this process of integration can also be a source of creativity and growth.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
How can the shadow be a source of creativity and growth?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
The shadow holds all those aspects of ourselves that we've rejected or repressed.
Okay.
That includes not only negative traits,
Right.
but also hidden talents,
Yeah.
passions, and desires.
Wow.
By integrating the shadow, we can access those hidden parts of ourselves
Right.
and unlock new potential.
So by facing our shadow, we actually open ourselves up to new possibilities and a richer understanding of who we are.
Exactly. It's like expanding our capacity for experience.
I see.
Instead of just operating from the limited perspective of our conscious mind,
Right.
we start to integrate those hidden aspects of ourselves,
Okay.
making us more whole and complex individuals.
I'm starting to see how the process of shadow integration
Yeah,
can be a source of both personal and collective transformation.
it definitely can.
Yeah.
And as you delve deeper into the source material,
Okay.
you'll find more about the positive potential of the shadow.
Right.
But it's important to remember that this process isn't always easy or comfortable.
Right.
It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face those parts of ourselves that we might have been avoiding for a long time.
It's like embarking on a journey into the unknown,
It is.
both within ourselves and within our society.
Absolutely.
But with the right tools and guidance, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to go on this journey alone.
Right.
There are many resources available.
Oh, like what?
Books, workshops, therapists
Oh, right.
to help you navigate the process of shadow work.
So it's about seeking support
Yes.
and finding those who can help us on this journey of self-discovery and collective healing.
Exactly. And as you start to integrate your own shadow,
Yeah.
you'll naturally become more compassionate and understanding of others.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a ripple effect.
If we can learn to accept and embrace our own shadow, we're more likely to extend that same grace and understanding to others.
Precisely. And as more individuals engage in this work,
Yeah.
it creates a collective shift in consciousness.
Okay.
It's like we're all contributing to a more enlightened and compassionate world.
Yeah.
One person at a time.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is.
And one that gives me hope for the future.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering,
Yeah.
how do we make this work sustainable? How do we prevent ourselves from falling back into old patterns of projection and blame?
That's a great question.
It is.
And it's one that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at specific practices and strategies
Right.
for sustaining this work and creating lasting change.
Well, I'm definitely eager to hear more about that.
I think you'll find it very interesting.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation so far.
It has.
And I'm feeling inspired to continue this journey of exploration and transformation.
I'm glad to hear that.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the collective shadow.
It's great to be back.
We've been unpacking this concept from Jungian psychology, how
Oh,
societies kind of develop a shadow side,
yeah.
made up of all the things that they just deem unacceptable.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about how it's projected outward,
Yeah.
causing all sorts of conflicts.
Yes.
But now let's get practical.
Okay.
How do we actually move towards healing and transformation?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It's not enough to just understand the shadow.
Right.
We need to actively engage in its transformation.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about individual awareness and systemic change.
Right.
But I think there's another crucial element we need to discuss.
Oh, what's that?
Compassion.
Compassion. Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I can definitely see how having compassion for others
Right.
is essential for dismantling that us versus them mentality
Absolutely.
that the shadow thrives on.
Yes.
But how does compassion for ourselves fit into this?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
The shadow often emerges from, feelings of fear,
Mm-hmm.
shame, and unworthiness.
Right.
We reject those parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable
Uh-huh.
because we just haven't learned to accept and love ourselves fully. Imperfections and all.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if we can cultivate a deeper sense of self-compassion,
Yes.
we're less likely to project our own shadow onto others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we can embrace our own imperfections,
Mm,
we create space for others to do the same.
I like that.
We become less judgmental, more forgiving,
Okay.
and more able to see the humanity in everyone,
Right.
even those who hold different beliefs than our own.
Yeah.
And this is where practices like mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
meditation, and self-reflection can be incredibly valuable.
So it's not just about understanding the shadow intellectually,
No, it's not.
but also about cultivating those inner qualities
Yeah.
that allow us to meet it with compassion and wisdom.
Absolutely. And this brings us to the idea of shadow work,
Right.
which is a term you'll find throughout your sources.
Okay.
It's not about trying to eliminate the shadow.
Right.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
But about integrating it,
Okay.
learning from it,
Uh-huh.
and using it as a catalyst for growth and transformation.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
It's not about denying those darker aspects of ourselves or our society,
Right.
but about acknowledging them,
Yeah.
understanding them, and finding the wisdom they hold.
Precisely. The shadow isn't inherently evil. It's a part of us that has been neglected or disowned.
Right.
By bringing it into the light of consciousness, we can integrate it into our wholeness
Right.
and become more complete and compassionate beings.
This is such a powerful message,
It is.
especially in our current world, which
Yeah.
often feels so divided and polarized.
It does.
But I'm curious, how do we cultivate this compassion on a collective level? It's one thing to practice self-compassion,
Right.
but how do we extend that to entire societies or
Yeah.
even the global community?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It all starts with recognizing our interconnectedness.
Oh, okay.
We're all part of this human family,
Right.
sharing this planet and facing global challenges together.
So instead of viewing ourselves as separate individuals or groups, we need to develop a sense of belonging and shared responsibility.
Exactly. And this requires a shift in perspective,
Okay.
a willingness to see beyond our own limited viewpoints
Right.
and empathize with the experiences of others, and even those who may seem very different from us.
Yeah.
Your sources highlight the power of storytelling and art in this process.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I can see how art can touch us on a deeper level,
Right.
bypassing intellectual barriers
Uh-huh.
and fostering a sense of shared humanity.
Yeah.
But how does storytelling help?
By sharing our stories and experiences,
Okay.
we create bridges of understanding and empathy
Right.
across cultures and communities. We start to see the world through each other's eyes
I see.
and recognize our shared humanity.
So it's about finding ways to connect with each other on a human level,
Yeah.
beyond our differences
Exactly.
in beliefs, values, or experiences.
Yes, and your source material mentions a few practices that can help with this.
Oh, like what?
Restorative justice,
Okay.
nonviolent communication,
Uh-huh.
and intergroup dialogue.
Right.
These are all ways of engaging with conflict in a way that promotes understanding, healing, and reconciliation.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done,
There is.
both individually and collectively.
Yes.
But I'm feeling more hopeful now than I did at the beginning of our conversation.
I'm glad to hear that.
You're painting a picture of a world where we've learned to embrace our shadows, to cultivate compassion,
Yes.
and to work together to create a more just and equitable future for all.
That's the vision.
Yeah.
And I believe it's possible.
Yeah.
It takes courage, commitment, and a willingness to step outside our comfort zones.
Right.
But the rewards are immeasurable.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful and inspiring.
Well, thank you.
And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listener, I want to leave you with this.
Okay.
The collective shadow may seem daunting,
Uh-huh.
but it's also a powerful reminder of our shared humanity.
It is.
By facing it with courage, compassion, and a commitment to growth,
Yeah.
we can transform it into a catalyst
Absolutely.
for a more just equitable and compassionate world.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Remember, the journey of shadow integration is ongoing.
Right.
Each step we take towards greater awareness and compassion brings us closer to a brighter future for all.
That's a powerful note to end on.
It is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the collective shadow.
Yes, thank you.
We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas
Absolutely.
and finding ways to bring them into your own life and community.
Yes. That's it for today.